had the fortune of bumping into, and the guy, he actually came to the house. His name was Tom Hilliard. He was a UW EOP recruiter. And apparently in 67, I didn't know this, the University of Washington had quite a problem with their enrollment of students. 33,000 students, half of them were women, so the issue was that they had literally no people of color going to school in those days. So blacks, Latinos, American Indians for sure were not enrolled or rarely enrolled. There may be one or two out of 33,000 students, but none of those U.S. kids had a chance to go to school. But if you're a foreign kid from England or France or Australia or wherever, you had a better chance to get accepted and enrolled at the U than U.S. kids. And I was raised in Pasco. I was a Washingtonian, right? But I couldn't go to school here. So in 67, the black community ended up demonstrating enough to the U and couldn't convince them about the idea of getting more of these kids of color enrolled in school. So their way of protesting is they eventually got some of the heavy duty equipment and they drove it into this big pit called Red Square at the time. And apparently, I guess that was about a 10-story down thing. So they aimed the equipment the right way and got out of it, and it went down to the bottom of the hole. And I guess if you lose enough pieces of equipment, you get the idea pretty quick. These guys are serious. They would like their kids enrolled in school. Well, it doesn't take a genius to figure this out, and the university figured it out, and they went, wow. So they actually started a program, and they called it the Special Education Program, SEP. That lasted for less than, months. It was less than a year. And they switched the name to the Equal Opportunity Program, a better suited name for the program. They had a couple of the grad students and older students become staff for this. And Tom Hilliard was one of those persons that became hired staff at the U. And his job was to go out and recruit and look for minority students to enroll. So he was looking for, I guess I don't want to call it the cream of the crop, but he was looking for kids that were outstanding. And in 68, when he was running around Tri-Cities, and we had a large enough black population that would be part of the reason to come to the Tri-Cities. So he was looking for this population, but he was also looking for Native American and Latino students as well. And I was one of these bright-eyed kids who had just graduated with 2 trade skills. With a fairly good, I guess, GPA or a decent GPA for that, for being a trades kid. So he literally came to the house and talked to my parents and wanted to recruit me. I happened not to be at home at the moment. My brother had come home, and he was attending Columbia Basin College. He was a freshman student his first year, had a much higher GPA than me. But he was already had graduated the year prior. So he talked to my brother, and my brother immediately jumped at the chance of going to the U. So he signed him up. But Tom was still looking for me. He was looking for this little welder. So sure enough, I came home. So he had a chance to chat with me about it. And he was trying to convince me to go to school. And I kept saying, no, I was kind of focused on being a welder and aircraft assembly mechanic, and he kept trying to convince me, and I kept saying no. And he kept saying, well, there's 33,000 students, and didn't mean anything to me. So he kept it up, and he said, if you go to school at the U, if you're welding, you could go to the shipyards, like, Todd Shipyard or something. I was going, And he goes, well, you can even go out to Boeing. And I was going, oh. And he goes, well, if you go to school, and you're already there, you could easily go over to the shipyards or the Boeing and check, and maybe maybe you can get a job. If your school doesn't work out, maybe that's an option for you. And I said, well, yeah, it kind of makes sense, but and I kept looking at my folks and still wasn't quite sure. And then it hit on Tom, the bright idea. He says, I got a 17-year-old kid I'm sure his hormones are popping all over the place. So he reminded me that of half of that student body, those 16,000 women students were there. And he said, gosh, what do you think? And I went, wow, I never thought of that, you know. And my eyes picked up, and I looked at my dad, and he just smiled, and he said, son, you'll never get another shot at this. And I went, well, what the heck? You know, I can always go to Boeing and to the shipyards. So I said yes, and that got me to the U. So I became an enrolled EOP student.